Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor.
I am the Martian ambassador.
Des Moines and all of central Iowa, welcome to Max World Live. Max World is your world. Every day we talk about the issues and topics that matter most to you. And as always, it's your voice we want to hear in Max World. So join the conversation by calling 515-244-0077. And now, here's the host of Max World Live, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, good afternoon. 6 minutes after the hour. 24th day of November in the Lord's year 2015. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Here we are, just 2 days away from Turkey Day. And that makes us 1 month from Christmas. Hard to believe that we are 1 month away from Christmas. What has happened to the year? I'm asking you a question, Will. What's happened to the year?
Well, you know, they say that the older you get, the faster it goes.
I always heard it was the other way around.
Looking at Tom, it's got to be that case.
I see. Tom Coates in the house along with Will Rogers this afternoon for our Tuesday afternoon spin around the political globe. And glad to have you both here. Of course, if you want to have any conversation about what's going on in the Middle East today, I'm assuming you're both aware of it. You just drove in from Iowa City, so I'm assuming you've had the radio on, or maybe not. Do you know what's going on?
Well, you know, Russia's always a couple hours behind, so what's going on?
Russia's a couple hours behind.
You're talking about Russia, too.
Oh, with Russia?
You heard about the Turkey,
yes,
Russia.
Down in the Russian jet. Yep, I've heard about
so
that.
Turkey told Russia not to fly in their airspace anymore, and they did it anyway, and they downed one of their jet fighters. And when a helicopter from the Russian side came in to recover the bodies or the soldiers that were flying the planes, a Syrian, American-made rocket or missile blew up the helicopter.
And the ISIS claims they shot and killed the two pilots as they were parachuting down.
ISIS did.
That's what they claim.
All right. So now we've just got a whole new mess with my enemy's friend, your friend, my...
Yeah.
And I hear that NATO may put in the fifth article, which is the article that says if one of us declares war, we're all in, right?
Right.
And France could have done it a week ago, and now it looks as though, Turkey may do it for Russia flying into their airspace. Where does it end up?
That's a great question. Nobody really knows at this point, obviously, but I don't see that we're going to have a going to war with Russia, and I don't see how that solves any of the world's problems. I think that someone's got to take a bigger stand against ISIS. I know that Russia certainly has tried to, but their solution isn't one that I think that most Westerners find tolerable, and that's to keep Assad in power. And right now, that's really just the in my opinion, that's the difficulty that we're going to have with aligning with Russia on this particular policy. But we're not going to see, I don't think, United States, Russia, or any of our Western allies square off against this over Russia. I think this thing with Turkey goes away, personally.
Well, maybe it does, Will, but I think the issue with Assad, I think, raises a lot of questions. I think if we go back even to the point that the Shah of Iran was put in there as a strong man, Carter pulled the plug on him, and we went down to what we've got. I think it could be argued that George W. Bush, going past where his father stopped at the border, he went in and took Saddam out.
Correct.
Ostensibly, and I know there was live intelligence that he had weapons of mass destruction. If we kept our military forces in there, it'd been one thing. When Obama pulled out the military, it goes into chaos. The move to remove the strongman Mubarak from Egypt led them into a position that they're less stable. Certainly, what Hillary claims is her foreign policy accomplishment, the removal of Gaddafi from Libya, led that country into chaos. I'm not at all certain that we want Assad out, as bad a guy as he is, because what it might lead to is just further chaos over there. And so I'm one, I guess, if I go back and do a do-over, I leave those dictators in place. When Gaddafi came to Obama in his first year of office, he said, we've got a common enemy. We need to be working together against these radical Muslims. And, of course, a year later, they digged him out of a hole. I don't think our situation's any better off. We'd have been far better off to leave Gaddafi and some of these other dictators in place. That would be my position.
Well, that's certainly one viewpoint on how we could have handled our diplomacy towards the Middle East. I certainly think that the president, when the Arab Spring occurred, especially in Iran, certainly didn't make any effort whatsoever to help out the revolutionaries that were in place, and subsequently the current regime there, which we constantly talk about how bad they are.
Yeah.
The question is what do you get when you get rid of those guys? You know, one example, and I've referenced this just not too long ago, but there was a movie out a couple years ago called Charlie Wilson's War. I
read the book, saw the movie.
Right, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's character that he plays in that is kind of a CIA intelligence officer, and at the time of that period in history, it was when we helped supply the Mujahideen with the weapons to defeat the Soviets. And at the time, it was like, wow, isn't this a great victory? And he said, we'll see. And that was the point was, we'll see what becomes of this 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. And we certainly saw what happened with that in Afghanistan when they became the hotbed of terrorist activity in the world and subsequently recruited and trained people to fly jets into buildings in the United States.
Well, Charlie Wilson thought that we should put more money in infrastructure over there in Afghanistan. I'm not sure about that either, because I think George W. Bush believed that if people were allowed over there to have a democracy, to have an elected democratic republic like we have, that they would embrace it. I think that, as well-meaning as a man as he is, and I believe George W. Bush is, I think he was absolutely wrong on that. I do not think democracy works over in some of those parts of the world. I think if you take the strong man away, I think you allow the most radical, the most vicious element to come to power.
I'm not going to take an argument with that, Tom, but at the same time, one of the things that you'll see with other countries around the world that don't have terrorism, we can look at Africa as an example, with numerous countries that have all kinds of strife and problems going on in them, to create politically stable economies, in those areas, that goes a long way to helping individuals flourish. In these countries that don't have strong economies, and you have a few individuals controlling the wealth in those countries, you will have political strife no matter what long term.
Well, and of course, those African countries have tremendous natural resource wealth. In many of those countries, you've got dictators that are siphoning off the wealth. The people are still living in poverty, and they've done as many of the dictators have always done. They put the money in their own pockets, and they've impoverished their people and kept them subjugated.
Yep, absolutely.
So, in the end of the day, is Obama the smartest guy in the room? Because he's kept us out of everything?
President Obama has continuously and subsequently kicked the can down the road and is leaving this up to the next person to have to deal with all the fallout.
And the next person will be the next president.
Correct.
Does he want a Democrat to be that next person, or would he rather hand that to a Republican? He doesn't care.
I'm certain that he would love to have a Democrat, or Hillary in particular, be president of the United States. I think he would be glad to continue to see the country move further and further to the left. That is his long-term ambition.
And what do you think his next job is? President Obama.
I'm certain that, he is going to go on to make more money than any previous president has ever received in their retirement, as a public speaker, as an author, as a celebrity, and he'll continue to amass large sums of money. And while at the same time, like Bill Clinton, he will not play that reserved role from the presidents that we've seen in the past. He will be sticking his fingers in everything along the way, especially if there was a Republican president.
I agree with that, and I don't know that a platform, something like maybe the chair of the UN or something like that, might not be something that would be off his table, too. That way he could keep a constant...
You stole my thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. But that's what I think. I think he's gonna become the what's the title? The
Secretary General?
Yeah, Secretary General of the United Nations. But doesn't that take a Democratic president to get him in there?
Yes, and also the countries that will vote, that has to be a majority vote of the assembly.
Most of them liberal.
True, but even as liberal as they are, they still don't like the U.S. So it's just a fact. I mean, even Obama is not beloved around the world.
Really?
No.
I would think that every one of our former enemies just love him, and our former allies just despise him.
No matter who's in charge, it's still death to America.
Really?
Yeah.
Even when it's someone who's like
someone
Obama.
who was going to change all of that. This moment he got elected, all of the Arab and Muslims were going to embrace our American
Nobel Peace Prize winner right out of the chute.
Yeah, Nobel Peace Prize winner. That's right. He was on the job for a whole 11 days before the nominating committee awarded him recognized him as the Peace Prize winner.
And that just takes all the air out of that Peace Prize.
Absolutely. It's meaningless.
It is meaningless. Well, anyway. But we should have seen it coming then, shouldn't we?
Yes.
What was going to happen.
Yes.
And then they elected him again.
Yes.
The low information voters. That's who I call them. All right, we're going to take our first break. And when we come back, the family leader had their family forum last week. Polls are out, and we'll talk a little bit about polls and why you should or shouldn't believe in them. Or if you are going to believe in them, know how the sausage is made in the kitchen before you put it in your mouth. And also the rise of Ted Cruz and the slip of Dr. Ben Carson. What's going on there on the Republican side? We'll talk about it next, live, here on The Truth.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
21 minutes after the hour of 4 o'clock on this 24th day of November. I'm J. Michael McCoy. This is Max World Live on a Tuesday. Tom Coates sitting in along with Polk County Republican co-chair Will Rogers. And what's going on in the Polk County Republicans right now? Anything exciting?
Well, as exciting as it can get. We have...
caucuses are 60 days.
That's right, but we've been working on it for several months now. In Polk County, we have 177 precinct caucuses that will take place on February the 1st. So we're lining up 177 locations. We got almost all but just about 3 or 4 of them confirmed because we've had some difficulty with finding venues that will be large enough to hold some of these caucus locations. We'll be seeing 700, 800, possibly even larger than that show up for an individual precinct caucus in some areas. Plus working around all with the schools, the churches, the community centers. And we've had some churches that have said that they won't have us in their facilities this year.
Why?
Really? Why?
Well, they've said 2 things. One had mentioned to me that it may be that they don't want to engage in a political thing, and they see the caucuses as a political event rather than a part of the election process.
Okay.
And then someone also said to me, and was that it's not a part of their mission. And I understand that that's not part of their mission. That's fine. But we had been using some of those facilities in the past. That puts us in a difficult position.
Well,
plus,
the other side of that coin is there's a lot of churches that get planted, and they use high schools, elementary schools, middle schools as their place of worship on Sundays. What happens when that turns around? I mean, does the government then come to us and say, "Listen, we're going to do this separation thing really dirty, and you can't meet in our churches anymore, or you can't meet in our schools anymore"?
I just, the way that it worked out, hopefully that won't be the case in the future. But like this year, we're having to rent, I know, the Seven Flags Event Center, which is costing the county party. I think we ended up paying $1,500 just for that facility use alone. Wow. But we've got to do it. There's just nothing else in that area that was suitable because, again, the churches weren't amenable to using their facilities. Now, I'm not blaming the churches. I'm just saying that that's just stating the case. We also are trying to find individual precinct chairs. These are temporary chairs, temporary secretaries, and then also a person that will report the results of the caucus electronically via cell phone application. And that's all these people will undergo training. So we're looking right now at 177 times 3, plus some of these locations that have large numbers of people. We're going to have 4 or 5 minimal volunteers at those locations as well. So we may be recruiting 600 plus volunteers just to participate on caucus night alone.
And you said, I think off air, that 15% of the caucus attendees are going to be attending through Polk County.
Yeah,
at least that's the estimate.
We have 10% of all the precinct caucuses. We're at least expecting 15%, though, of all the caucus attendees to come from Polk, possibly even closer to 20%.
Wow.
And I know I caucused in Clive, and we lost the DeWay campus.
Yep.
That's the lottery now, so my guess is they don't want to participate.
No.
And that probably is why you went to Seven Flags.
That would be correct. That's
Which
one of
the lottery would be an appropriate venue for such a thing.
Perhaps. Maybe everybody can hit the Powerball over there and win the presidential caucus. So.
There you go.
But we've been working on that, and that's been taking up a lot of our time. We've, of course, been still out there fundraising and also working to build organization. And we actually have a strategy that we're working on for starting this year and then moving into next year about how we can go about making Polk County a permanent Republican majority county. So
that would be nice.
Oh,
yes.
Boy.
That would be nice. All right, so let's go to what this is all talking about. Right now, they're set for February 3rd?
The first Monday.
All right, February 1st. Do you anticipate that we'll be forced by other states to move that up?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much set in stone at this point.
Okay. All right. Are you just being optimistic? Or
Nope.
No?
I think the RNC put in, and the RNC along with the DNC put in some very harsh penalties to dissuade any states from potentially doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Like what are some of the penalties that they could
That
face?
none of their delegates would be seated at the national convention.
Wow, that does kind of take the...
Something like that happened to Florida some years back. They lost half their delegates.
Yes,
didn't they?
that was the last one, 2008.
Was that the Chad? The hanging Chad?
No, that was 2008 when Hillary and Barack, and Hillary actually, I think, went on to win Florida, but none of those delegates were seated.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, Mac, you mentioned the Family Leader event came on the day of our first big winter storm. They still had about 1,300 turnout?
Yeah, they were filled. They were full.
So what do you hear about that, Will? I mean, that's supposedly one of the key conservative Christian gatherings. Trump didn't make the show. Most of the rest of them did. What did you hear about that?
Well, from what I heard from people so far, they had a great time. They enjoyed it a lot. I don't think anything was learned, though. I mean, everybody, I think, pretty much knew what the candidates were about. They already knew what boxes they could check with them. So I'm saying there wasn't really any new discoveries to be made about Ted Cruz or Ben Carson or Marco Rubio.
Well, let me say this. I ran into a guy, I had a lunch with some other fellows today, and a guy that's very close with some of the board members and some of the people, much more so than I am with that, said that the buzz coming out of there was for Marco Rubio. That some of the board members and some of the people that are decision makers over there were taken aback at how impressive he was and how impressed they were with him. It's kind of been assumed for certain reasons that Ted Cruz would be, given their recommendation, they will put their chips behind Ted Cruz. And now I'm hearing that it might be a little bit more of a contest with what they thought after this event last Friday. You haven't heard that though? No,
I didn't. I mean,
okay. I know you've been out and occupied. I just heard that today.
Yeah, I was traveling till Friday afternoon, coming back from Washington D.C., and by the time I made it back home, I'd made a quick stop at an event, and I went to bed. I was in bed at 7:45. That's the first time I've done that in probably 20 years, but I was exhausted from traveling. So,
put your headphone on there. Frank thinks he has something important to share.
I can hear him without putting it on. Go ahead.
Well, I was down. I attended the forum. I sat through the whole thing right up, left there at 10:30, I guess. The emphasis of the forum was 2 Chronicles 7:14. The verse which is promised that God will heal a nation if his people will humble themselves, seek his face, pray, and turn from their wickedness. Now, I want you guys to contrast that with, I got home about 11 o'clock, 5 minutes till 11. I flipped on the TV, and there was some sort of a contemporary music Hollywood event on A&E channel or History Channel. I can't remember which. And I think the rapper, it could have been Kanye West, but I could have been mistaken on that. But Madonna echoed basically the same sentiment last week, and his rap was all about be a better you. Now, I don't know how exactly they didn't give you no instructions how to be that better you, but contrast that with humble yourself, seek God's face, pray, turn against your wickedness, versus be a better you. So if the terrorist is getting ready to light that vest on that he's got strapped on, and he's on the sidewalk cafe, and somebody offers him a glass of water, he takes that glass of water and quenches his thirst. He's going to be so impressed with that person's kindness because they were a better you. He's just going to decide not to blow up that suicide vest. Now, guys, do you believe what society, the contrast in society from the secular world, what they're trying to tell us to do, and what we really know we need to do?
Well, I'm sorry I missed this show that you're talking about, Frank, and Madonna and all that. I guess that wasn't on the station I was watching that night, but you're right. There is a dramatic contrast. I don't think anybody in this studio is going to disagree with you in regards to the avowed secularism that constitutes the left, the Democrat Party in this country. And there is, it is not uniform in our party. It's much more uniform in theirs. But there's an ongoing battle. And one of the things that I think we ought to be a little bit more mindful of, and the Democrats don't do this. The Democrats typically don't eat their own. Even with Bernie Sanders, who's an unacceptable candidate for the Democrats, they are not trying to demonize him. They're trying to gently bring his followers along under Hillary's wing. We, on the other hand, tend to want to beat our own up. We can talk about the establishment trying to beat up the non-traditional candidates. We can talk about Trump's vitriol against people like Ben Carson and others. The different wings of the Republican Party are much more anxious to beat each other up and therefore create hard feelings. And when it comes down to election time, I think it's going to be more difficult for us now, and it has been in the past, to come together. I think with the last election, Will, in the 2012 when we had Mitt Romney, I think there were millions of conservative Christians that felt disenfranchised and stayed home, which is part of the reason Barack Obama was able to get an undeserved second term. If, on the other hand, we get a Christian conservative candidate, maybe like a Ted Cruz or someone, I think there will be many of the establishment that want to stay home or even vote the other way just to be spiteful towards somebody that has been demonized on their side. What do you think about the kind of infighting that we have more so in the Republican Party than I think they have over in the Democrat side?
Well, Tom, I mean, I think that ultimately it's defeating ourselves prematurely. I mean, it's bad enough to lose to the Democrats. We don't need to lose because we self-inflict our own wounds. I do know that you can certainly say, oh, well, Bernie Sanders isn't being attacked by Hillary. Well, that's because Bernie Sanders is legitimately 30 points behind in the polls to Hillary, and she's continuing to gain momentum. She doesn't have to attack Bernie. In fact, what she needs to do is embrace his somewhat...
And she has.
His ideology.
To some degree, she has.
Absolutely, and also embrace his supporters.
Mm-hmm.
In the Republican Party, we have I think it's the fun strategy of, well, you're pro-life, but you're not pro-life enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing that we could probably go through the majority of the people in our Republican primary and say, are they pro-life? Absolutely. But they're not pro-life enough. That's why somebody's not going to support them. Or they're not conservative enough. Or they're not, believe in Jesus enough. And that bothers me when we start trying to split people's hairs.
Well, and the flip side, have you heard Kasich and Bush's PACs coming out and attacking Donald Trump?
No question. And here's the thing that I find with that is all that's going to do is cause the Donald Trump supporters to double down on their support for Donald Trump. In fact, every time Donald Trump does something, let's say controversial or negative, or says something, whether it's an attack on John McCain, or he says something about Megyn Kelly, or he shows a lack of particular tact, his supporters get even more entrenched.
You seem to. I mean, I thought the last time when he made that comparison with Ben Carson over a child molester, calling him a pathological and everything else, I thought, well, this is really finally taking it down because Ben's too likable. And damned if Ben Carson didn't go down in the polls and Donald Trump went up some. I mean, right. So common logic and assessment is not working here.
And the funny thing is whenever anyone has pointed out a fact about Donald Trump's record or Donald Trump's past, anything that's factual, I mean, not up for debate or, well, that's a gray issue, things that he's actually said. I mean, they're playing these ads are going to be sound bites of Donald Trump. The fact is his response is, they're being nasty to me, and it's, I'm Donald Trump, the victim. I don't know what universe you live in when you're a $9 billion guy and you're the victim.
We're coming back. Will Rogers in the house along with Tom Coates here in Max World on 99.3.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fix them problem today. If they have another problem, 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you can just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
All right, 22 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News, and then Hank, the Bible Answer Man. You can call in now. It's not too early to call Hank, 1-888-ASK-HANK, to get your question on that show. If you want to have your voice heard in this show, well, that's easy, too. 515-244-0077. 515-244-0077. It's your voice we want to hear. Who do you like?
We got 3 answer men on this show, Mac.
Huh?
We got 3 answer men on this show, not just 1.
And Frank.
3.5.
And what if the caucuses were tonight? What if this was the 1st of February and you were heading to the caucuses and the political field was as it is right now? Who would your favorite be? 244-0077. So who's going to win the Iowa caucuses?
Well, I know that obviously the new Quinnipiac poll shows Ted Cruz with a big bounce. I think that's important to take note of. Again, at the same time, I always tell people the only poll that matters is the one that's taken on election night.
Yeah, because for those of you that don't know how polls are taken, it is the most random, unscientific thing you're ever going to see. It's like sitting in your mother's back room while she's making sausage, and then you actually go eat it. If you knew how polls were taken, you'd never believe in them.
Guys, I think that there's going to be people going to the caucuses on caucus night that are still going to be somewhat undecided. I think they're still going to be willing to talk to their neighbors. They're going to be willing to listen to speeches, and they're still going to make up their minds at that point. Now, a lot of people don't pick up their phones. My phone rings 2 or 3 times a night. Yours probably does too. If I feel in the mood and I've got time, I'll pick it up and I'll give them my thoughts on their poll. But a lot of people don't touch their phones when they see that the call is coming from out of the immediate area.
I don't.
And so I don't know how reliable the polls are. Will, off the air, you said how organized and how fervent the Cruz people are, and I agree with you. The events that I've been to says the same thing. Now, how electable he may be in a general, he's polarizing. He does not have some of the likability that I like to see in our candidates. Like, I think Marco Rubio is one of the most likable young men that we've got in our field, and I would love to have him somewhere on that ticket. Cruz is very confrontational and contentious. He's very bright. He's the greatest debater we've got probably at this point. Give us your thoughts on what a Cruz candidacy might look like.
Well, before I go down the Cruz path, I do want to say that if polling is done correctly, it will give you a fairly accurate snapshot of the moment in time in which it is taken. Ann Seltzer is a good example of this. She does the Iowa poll for the Des Moines Register.
Mm-hmm.
She is very accurate in her polling methodology.
Yeah.
And
she's been good.
She's been good, and there's other places out there that do it. And yes, he's correct. And Otto von Bismarck said there's two things that people should never be saying that being made, and that's laws and sausage, and I would add also to that polls as well.
Well, a lot of these polls are ostensibly polls. I hang around long enough to figure out they're push polls too.
Well, that's true. Absolutely.
And I finally said, that you've come to the point. This has been paid for by Jeb Bush because you're attacking everybody else but Jeb Bush on this thing. It's obvious to me who's paying for your time.
That's not a poll. That's just
a way to campaign.
So. Now let's talk about Ted Cruz, because I had the opportunity to go to a Ted Cruz event back in April. He had a tremendous amount of people that showed up to his announcement. This was, again, very early on. I had a great, energetic group of people that showed up. And a lot of the folks that I saw there were people that hadn't been around much in terms of the involvement in the party or in other campaigns for the last 5 to 10 years. And they were really excited to see him. I was really impressed with that level of energy. And since then, he's continued to go out and do the things that he needs to do in order to position himself to get to where he's at today. Now, the question is how will he continue momentum? And furthermore, what's really important about caucuses, at least here in Iowa, because that's the question, who's going to win the caucus? It's who's going to build the organization to turn those people out on caucus night. Mm-hmm. And that's something that not every campaign is doing a good job of, in my opinion, or at least I haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that groups that have been in the state of Iowa for a long period of time, for example, the Run, Ben, Run folks for Ben Carson, they've been here a long time. They've been building an organization a long time, and that's been folded into the efforts that will be getting Ben Carson out on election night. Ted Cruz, a lot of people don't think that he just kind of showed up in the last 6 months or a year. Ted Cruz, if you'll remember, he was really active a couple years back in helping try to defeat Obamacare, get Obamacare repealed. And he built up a national network of donors that way, and it was very effective for him. And he got a lot of support here in Iowa as well because of that. So he's built some organization early on. I'm going to just say there's other organizations out there that are doing a great job. There's some that they're struggling, whether it's due to lack of interest, lack of, by the electorate, lack of leadership within the campaign organization, but it'll be great.
Okay, hey, Frank wants to have something.
I had a question. What polls do you guys trust and distrust? I understand Gallup generally predicts stuff within a 0.5% on the presidential election, and they come up with a question in the 60s that basically said, you as a person, do you think the situations that are controlled your life is out of your control, or did you add to those problems? And the people that think that situations are out of their control generally line up Democratic, and those who think that they've shot themselves in the foot generally are Republicans, and that's how they've modeled their polls, and they claim to be accurate within a 0.5% on these presidential elections. Which ones do you guys trust, and which ones do you guys absolutely distrust?
Well, I look at, first of all, I think that the polling that's done here locally, again, by Ann Seltzer with the Iowa poll, she was one that predicted the Joni Ernst victory. She predicted the majority of all the races last year that she was involved with. And almost for the last, I think, 4 general election cycles, she's been extremely accurate in the outcomes of those elections. And they do polling throughout an election cycle. Part of the reason why is to see how your message is being effective and working. So I use Ann Seltzer as a good model of what can work. I know that Gallup actually, I believe, has started to say it's going to be shying away from doing presidential polls because they're having so much difficulty getting in touch and getting accurate contact with voters in order to make sure they're doing a good job there.
How do you reach them now, Will? Because the young people don't have landlines. You can't, in some cases, get their cell phone number. They won't answer it if you do call them. How do you get an accurate poll?
Well, this is a great example. Number one, they go out and the polling companies for example, the polling groups will go out and buy call lists. They will go out and buy a list from vendors. that have a list of people with their cell phones, and they can legally call them still. Then also they'd use a random random phone number generator where they just start dialing every possibility until they get a phone
working number.
a working number with a particular area code. And then when they talk to the person on the phone, then they use some simple screening in order to screen out the people that they don't want to include in the poll. And when I say that, when they don't want to include that, people would somehow cause inaccurate numbers to, an inaccurate count to occur in terms of the polling. David Retzlock, who is a visiting professor at Drake University right now, he runs the Eagleton Institute, which is for political science at Rutgers, and he actually runs their Eagleton poll. He's visiting Drake. He actually came to our Central Committee meeting about in October, and he gave a lengthy description of this and gave our Central Committee members, I think, really valuable information so they can understand what polling does. But again, that's just that moment in time.
Yeah.
Things can change in 24 hours in a presidential cycle.
Yeah. Here's my answer to Frank's question. The young lady from the Des Moines Register, this last gentleman that you spoke of, they may have the best system for polling. They still get an F in my book. Polling is nothing more than putting your finger in the air and trying to guess which way the wind's coming. Because at any minute that wind could change, or a semi drives by and blocks the wind. Polling is nothing more than hype. Now,
well, you're taking it further than what Will said. Will said it was a shot. It was a shot in time. It was a frame shot in time that can change quickly. We have seen polls be quite a bit off, but I don't think I would say they're absolutely worthless, Matt.
Yeah. All right, we're coming back live after this on The Truth, 99.3.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right, 10 minutes before the top of the hour, we're all discussing our health issues, a bunch of middle-aged old white men. But you were very sick this summer with pneumonia.
I did. I was actually, the last time I was in the studio was the last day of that week, and for 3 weeks that I worked. I was at home for 3 weeks sick, and it took me probably about till Labor Day before I actually got any real stamina back. And so
you're just getting
the problem with you went too long without having a cigar, and that's what caused you that. Yes, that was it.
And you're just getting over it. But didn't you catch yours on a trip?
Well, I had it, and I got rid of it. I thought it was perfectly fine that week in Florida, and I came back within a couple of days. I had it again. I'm just now getting over the doggone thing. It's a virus, and there's not much they can do about it.
Well,
but I'll give you some hints after we get off here.
Yeah, I had an important guest yesterday. Will, I wanted to be here with you here today, and I've got a really great show tomorrow. And if I hadn't had those guests booked, I wouldn't have been here this week. When I get off the air here in 9 minutes, I am just going to die.
Yep.
And I'm going to cough, and I went to my doctor is so great. You know, I know the healthcare industry is all messed up, but I've got an old geezer for a doc. I got his cell phone number. I texted him at 2-something this morning because I was having a coughing fit. Tom, when was the last time I was up at 2 o'clock? Well, that's when it was time to get up, not go to bed.
I was up a lot of nights with this stuff, Mac.
And I texted him. Now, I didn't get a text back from him until a little before 7 this morning, but he said, come on in. And I sat there for 2 hours, but he got me in. Now, he didn't say anything about pneumonia, but he did say there is a throat virus going around. And that's why, Tom, you didn't see this, but I have a can of Lysol. Like we were all born and raised with, and I'm spraying these things.
Well, last week I was struggling with the same when we did the Sam Clovis interview, Mac. Now, do you have a lot of mucus?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk after the show.
Okay. All right.
And let's go back to Will. Will had a thought, and on the polls, and it had to do with the 2012 elections. We'll share that with the audience.
One of the things that a lot of people get that they look back at 2012 and how Karl Rove and all these other people, the pundits that were looking at the polls that they were getting information from, failed to predict the Obama victory in some states that, of course, led to Obama's winning the election, and, of course, Mitt Romney failing, where they had polling that showed Mitt Romney winning. And the answer to that was, it wasn't that the polls were bad, it was that the model by which they were taken was bad and done with. Because if they looked at a traditional turnout model for voters in those particular areas, they were accurate. But what Obama's campaign was successful in doing was changing the model. For example, in 18 to 35-year-old Republican women, they were able to go out and get into that group of people and convince them to vote for Obama. And they talked about the war on women, and they talked about how Republicans were going to take away their education and their birth control and their jobs, and et cetera, and scared those women into voting for Obama. And that's how that model changed. And that's something that we're a lot more in tune with.
When they turned
forward.
out the minority model, we assumed that they would have a lower percentage. They actually had a higher percentage because of the way that they were working those people.
Yes.
It was dramatic. I mean, most of us assumed that the blacks and the Latinos would not turn out in these greater numbers, and they turned out in greater numbers in 12. A shock to me.
Yeah, it did as well. There was a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Frank, you had a question.
Well, getting back to polls I don't trust, I would never trust a New York Times, CBS poll if my life depended on it. But do you believe, Republicans get accused all the time of trying to suppress the vote. Do you find polling institutions like New York Times, CBS, purposely weight polls or model polls to suppress votes? To suppress Republican votes. In other words, it's a foregone conclusion, throw in the towel, give it up.
That's a great question. I mean, the strategy that's been discussed about that in the past, obviously, is that, that they're going to tell everybody how the election's going to turn out anyway, and so there's no need to even bother going and voting, and the Republicans will stay home on election night, or maybe on the other side, Democrats will stay home on election night when they see that Republicans are so far ahead. In fact, I think that the same number of people really do turn out no matter what the polling indicates if you've done the organization and the messaging properly to get people out. There's so much horse race journalism that goes on. People like Mac here, he thinks the polls are completely a sham and a fraud or whatever, they're not good. So you're not really going to pay attention to it. And there's a large percentage of people that probably feel that way. And then there's other people that may be like, oh, I got to know what the poll says before I go out to vote. Right. But at the same time, I don't think it really affects the outcome of any elections.
Polls are wrong recently. There were some polls showing the Kentucky's governor race going the other way. Mm-hmm. There were some other recent polls that showed the Democrats doing much better than they ended up doing. I think you can dispirit people. Let's look at the 1980 situation where Jimmy Carter got his rear kicked by Ronald Reagan, came out and made a concession speech before the Western states were closed on their polling. I don't know if you recall that. And in that case, many of the Democrats just stayed home. They said, well, Carter's already conceded, I'm not going to vote. And many of the Republicans were swept into office in some of those Western states, wouldn't have been on some of the downline races.
Well, those weren't actual polls.
No, they weren't. But the same kind of attitude, you trying to dispirit one group of people or another with some of these polls.
You could point out the same example happened to George Bush, W. Bush, back in 2000 when the western panhandle of the state of Florida had their polls open, and they were already calling Florida for Al Gore, even before people were getting out. Of course, there was a lot of, I remember on that night, there were people like Karl Rove saying, no, folks, there's still the polls.
Right, I remember that.
The election's still to be won. Get out and vote.
Right.
So, I mean, I understand that to an extent, but I don't think the polls are really used as that methodology. I think the media loves talking about it because it gives them something to talk about. There's no question about that. And it's, again, horse race journalism. You know, who's leading now, you know, and what's happening to shape that.
And by the way, just for what it's worth, please don't call that journalism. What we have today that counts as journalism is pathetic. And I just say that as an old, JUCO guy, University of Nebraska, 60s and 70s journalism school. If my journalism teacher, Dr. Rick Baker, I think his name was, if he came back and saw what we do today in the name of journalism, he'd jump off the Tallahatchie Bridge. I mean, seriously, it's just horrible out there. But, I'm just an old guy. All right, the piano's playing. That means we're done. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Will. Hope you have a wonderful day. Friends, family.
We'll be over north of 30 again this year at our house. So
okay. Tom, you got the whole clan coming over, I would imagine?
We actually did an early Thanksgiving dinner at my house on Sunday. We're going down south to my parents on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, I thought maybe you were going to volunteer at my church with me as we make 1,600 meals for the homeless on Thursday.
Well, I'll be there in spirit, Mac.
Will you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm making all the mashed potatoes. I'm making 40 pans of mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving. And we're going to run out of butter. Let me tell you, I make the best mashed potatoes. All right, Frank, thanks for producing. I'll see you tomorrow. The Deardorff family will be here tomorrow. They adopted 2 Russian orphans, 2 girls, sisters, many years ago, and the sisters will be here to tell you about their Thanksgiving and what they're thankful for. That's here, live, in Mac's World on 99.3 The Truth.